Okay, I'm going to start off with a different set. I'm just going to show you a couple of slides because this sort of sets the context for what we're going to talk about today. There are mergers. We're in the middle of merger mania. There's a lot of hospitals being acquired by other hospitals. There are lots of physician practices being acquired by hospitals. And there's many different reasons for this: health reform, capital access, and so on. But here's just some examples locally of what's been happening. So last year, High Point Regional was merged with UNC Healthcare System, and that was a very large merger, 350 bed, 2,300 staff. Why? Again, these comments are not my interpretation. These are from the public, the PR releases that the hospitals provided. The UNC is going to give $150 million in capital and $50 million to the Community Health Foundation. And the reason that High Point wanted to merge to advance in clinical care, remain competitive, while positioning us with a strong future. Caldwell emerged with UNC Healthcare in 2012. The 110-bed acute care hospital, more 50 docs. Again, UNC is going to provide $35 million in capital and $4 million to the foundation. And the reason that Caldwell said it wanted to merge is challenged to thrive as an independent community hospital. In other words, they saw themselves as being threatened by remaining as an independent hospital. They had to join a system. Wilson Medical Center last October was acquired by Duke LifePoint. They're getting 80% of it for $56 million, a 294-bed hospital. Again, 1,300 staff, fairly big, lot of people involved. Duke is going to spend $96 million on capital, pay off $34 million worth of debt that Wilson had, and reasons that Wilson wanted to merge to improve access to services and specialists, enhance market share, and position the hospital for health care reform, enhance the long-term viability by debt elimination. I actually think this is the best specified reason for merging, and I think that's really driving a lot of the local mergers as well. I think I have one more. And Marquette, this is a very odd merger. This is in Michigan. Duke LifePoint acquired Marquette General Health System, $483 million. This is a large merger, $500 million. Duke's going to spend $350 million on capital improvements. Again, the numbers here just sort of overwhelm me. $23 million contribution to the foundation, and again, the reason access to clinical and operational resources that will help the hospital survive. So this is kind of a mystery to me. This is really almost a pure investment and not a merger in order to gain market share or consolidate, rationalize resources in an area or to improve community health or anything. This seems to be just a pure investment. So that's what's driving, that's why we're going to talk about mergers and acquisitions today. There's a lot of it going on, and there is and it looks like the 2014 it is going to continue as well. So the question we're going to talk about today is, in essence, is should a merger happen? And the case you're going to do next week, there's going to be a large system that's thinking about acquiring physician group practice. And your job will be to decide whether they should do it or not. So there's lots of reasons. I just given you some real reasons that were published in the real world why mergers happen. Conceptually, why mergers happen. There's a lot of good reasons, and there are some questionable reasons for mergers as well. So good reasons, perhaps the best one is synergy, which is by putting two organizations together, there is synergy. And synergy means that the sum of the parts is greater than the value of the wholes exceeds the sum of the parts. In other words, putting them together, there's value created. They can have better care, more care at less cost, or the same care, or more care at the same cost, whatever. But synergy exists. And the synergy can rise in some ways. Operating economies. What's an example of operating economy? What does that mean? Robert?
If two organizations merge and they, both have like medical distribution centers, they can consolidate to one, perhaps.
Right. So another class, that's a good example. Another example might be the patient billing. You could put two patient billings departments together and probably manage the combined volume maybe with 10-20% less staff. So having operating economies basically means producing the combined output with fewer resources. What are financial economies? Robbie?
Is it being able to bargain with your suppliers and your payers to lower your costs?
Yes, so you might get group discounts and so on as well. That's true. What about just in a pure financial instrument sense of the world?
More capital to work with.
And why would that be?
Well, if you take something like Marquette General Hospital that merges with Duke, for example, Marquette suddenly has access to a lot more capital resources.
Marquette does, that's true. And what if Marquette and Duke go to the bond market? What impact might we see? Holding all other factors. Michelle?
It's less risk, it's more diversified.
Yeah, so they may get a lower cost of capital as well. Generally speaking, larger systems have lower costs of capital than small rural hospitals, for example. Differential managerial efficiency. What does that mean?
Basically means that you're getting rid of bad management and putting in place of computer management is going to be better.
Right, or you may be getting rid of mediocre management and replacing them with superior management. And then finally, increase market power. What does that mean? Robert?
You acquire a hospital like ones that UNC did. Those are no longer competitors. They're part of your system.
Mm-hmm.
So it reduces competition and gives you access to more markets.
And how will that benefit? How will that be reflected in value? You're right. I agree with everything you say. How? Take it another step.
I'm not sure.
Sarah?
Well, if you're like the major system in your area, then that means when you negotiate with BCBS, you have a lot of power in that conversation.
All right. When you walk into the room and you've got 90% of the market in an area, you have the provider has a lot more power. Whereas if you're one provider in an area that's got lots of providers, you have very little market power. Is market power a good thing? This is a trick question. Could be. That's a trick answer.
Well, if you expand, like, UNC acquires that when they acquire High Point Hospital, whatever risks that High Point has are now UNC's risks.
So it could be a good thing for UNC. Amy?
Limiting also from UNC standpoint, or whoever's, if they have 90%, they have limited growth as far as what else they can capture.
Okay. From whose perspective might market power be a bad thing?
Small players.
Yes, okay. I'm thinking about, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, potentially from the consumer perspective, and then also it seems from the text like a lot of government decisions are anti sort of this merging frenzy.
Right, so consumers, I think, this was is on Sakai. The courts are starting to rule, starting to take a much more critical eye of a lot of these hospital mergers, primarily because of the impact on prices and what it'll do to the burden that's placed on consumers. And this is just one example where a merger was actually stopped by the court system. And the DOJ and the FTC are also paying way more attention to mergers than they have in the past. So there are these, those are probably good reasons for mergers. Let me hold on. But there are also some skeptical reasons, or not clear reasons for mergers. Availability of excess cash. I've got a pot of money sitting there, don't know what to do with it, let's go buy a hospital. So why might that be a bad or questionable reason for a merger? Might be a good idea.
It seems a little irresponsible.
In what
You
sense?
might not have like this synergy, you might not have any more efficiencies by just because you have the money.
Right. What can an organization do with excess cash?
Yeah, reinvest it in itself.
Can reinvest in itself.
Pay dividends if they're for profit.
They could pay dividends if they're for profit. They could park it in some investments. So there are lots of different opportunities for excess cash besides buying another facility. And so the buying availability, just because you have excess cash, that's not a very good reason for a merger. Purchase assets below replacement cost. What does that mean? Or let me give you an example. You're going to go out and buy, you want to buy a SNF. And you estimate to build a new one will cost you $10 million. You can go across the street and buy one for $5 million. Is that a good investment? Is that a good reason for merging, acquiring? Amy?
I mean, there's probably a lot of other costs needed to get it up to the quality that you wanted, or maybe it's not at such a discount because it being more of a term, so there's other costs, it seems.
Capital cost, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay, let's say it's $8 million.
let's say it's not.
I said it was 5 and 10. Let's say that you add in the extra costs and it's $8 million. You can build for new for $10 million, or you can acquire for $8 million. Is it a good investment?
The other like complications of acquisition as far as like aligning the goals of the organization or changing over the employees to your new organization. It might be easier to start fresh than to convert an existing organization to that change.
Right, so those are all important organizational issues to be considered. I'm speaking from a purely financial point of view. What is the value of any asset? The present value of future cash flows. If that SNF has present value of future cash flows that are below the $5 million, is it a good buy at any price, at 5 or 10? So this is not a good reason. Just being able to buy an asset on which you're going to lose money at a lower price is not a good reason for a merger. So just follow the arithmetic again. If you find that the present value of the cash flows of the SNF is $4 million, then being able to buy it for 5 is not a good deal. Even though it's less than the 10 and compared to building a new one, it's still a money loser. So just buying assets below replacement cost is not a good reason for a merger. Diversification. If you're a for-profit healthcare system, you want to diversify to benefit your shareholders, is that a good reason? Do the shareholders of HCA care about whether the management diversifies or not?
No, because they could diversify their own portfolios.
Which is a much more efficient way of doing it. Investors of HCA and other for-profit organizations can diversify their own portfolios just by buying different assets. They don't need the management of HCA to diversify for them. So that's a poor reason in the for-profit sense. It may be a legitimate reason in the not-for-profit sense. Why?
Could it potentially attract more investors?
in the not-for-profit sense. They don't have investors, not-for-profits.
Or donors.
Okay, why would it do that? It might, I don't know, I'm just asking.
I mean, for diversifying into another area.
Okay, so the
Be more
ability,
passionate about whatever the purpose and the goal of the service that they provide.
okay, so the ability to attract new contribution capital, that may be true as well. Bobby?
Because the stakeholders in a not-for-profit can't easily diversify their stake in that entity. If that shuts down, then the patients in the community, they don't have another option.
That's true. So what happens when a not-for-profit diversifies? What are the financial risk consequences of that? Going back to Chapter 4, last term. Why do I tell you to diversify your portfolios? I've said that many times.
The risk decreases.
Your risk decreases because the correlation to cash flows may be less than perfect. And if they're less than perfect, then you've got less financial risk to your cash flows. So it may make sense for not-for-profits to diversify if it results in more stable cash flows. I'll give you just a very quick example of that. When I first joined the board of Piedmont, we were a community health center only. And then right after I joined, we formed a PACE, Program for the Advanced Care for the Elderly program. That PACE program now is almost 2/3 of our revenue, is almost 1/3 of our revenue. So we've gone from being a community health center with cash flows that go like this to a community health center and a PACE program with much more stable cash flows. That really benefited our organization. Our cash flows are much more stable with the PACE program than they were before the PACE program. That's just a very simple example. Personal incentives, what does that mean? Sarah?
It's just the idea that someone that's in charge of a hospital might be incentivized to merge with another hospital because then their pay is probably going to go up and they're going to see.
Yeah, that's the exact reason. I mean, I'm sure your generation will be different, but when my MHA classmates get together, there's a, well, I'm the VP of a 500-bed hospital. What are you? You know, I'm a VP of a 200-bed hospital. Oh, that's too bad. So that's not a good reason to become a larger organization. And then finally, breakup value. There are companies that go around buying assets for the sheer purpose of breaking them up and selling them off, which has all kinds of different issues as such with it.